My world was shattered not by a gunshot, but by the whisper of an old woman in the hospital ward where I had stepped straight off my private jet, still wearing my Italian cashmere coat. She lay under a snow-white, perfectly pressed blanket that must have cost my personal driver a year's salary, and her haggard face, lined with a web of wrinkles, seemed carved from stone, frozen in pain. I had not come for her. I had come to this neglected provincial hospital to buy it, or rather, to tear it down, to demolish it, to build another glass skyscraper with my name on the facade, because her land was the last piece of land standing in the way of my mega-project Eden. All her neighbors had sold their shacks long ago, taking money from my hands that would have lasted several lifetimes, but this old woman named Martha stubbornly refused, blocking a deal worth billions of dollars. I was here to end this senseless drama by offering her a sum that would have made even the dead rise from their beds, but she only shook her head, her eyes, the color of faded jeans, showing neither fear nor greed, only boundless, quiet weariness. "Money will not replace what you took, Mr. Victor," she croaked, and there was no reproach in her voice, only a statement of fact that rang in my head like a bell. I felt a cold web of sadness, or perhaps just irritation at someone else's stubbornness, wrap itself around my throat, forcing me to lean closer to her bed, because I couldn't believe that someone would dare to speak to me in such a tone, and about taken away at that. "I didn't take anything from you, Marta. I offer you a way out, a comfortable old age, a life without worries, because your house, like this whole hospital, is a ruin, a past that must be demolished to create a future," I replied, my voice low as always and controlled, like a steel rod. I had always believed that the future was me, and it was forged from my impeccable financial calculation and unwavering will. She pointed with a trembling finger at an old, yellowed photograph that stood on the bedside table, a man in military uniform, his face blurred by time, but his eyes shining with amazing kindness. "My son. Your partner. Mikola," she said, and the name knocked me off my feet. Mikola. I hadn't heard from him for many years, since the day he left, leaving me, as we agreed then, all our joint assets, all our capital, because he was tired of the business, of the dirt in it, as he liked to say. This exit of Mikola became my rocket that catapulted me to financial Olympus. All these years I had built my empire on the foundation of that inheritance, considering him a weak, idealistic idiot who couldn't stand the pressure. Marta slowly raised her eyes to me, and there was no longer any fatigue in them, only pain, sharp as a blade, but not directed at me personally, but at my essence. "He didn't leave. He didn't get tired. He was killed. On the very spot where you are going to build your Eden." Her words shards rang through me, and then she added, her voice dropping to an almost inaudible whisper that was louder than any explosion, "He found something there that was going to destroy you. And you knew it. You are his last and only heir, Mr. Victor. You didn't inherit money. You inherited guilt." I found myself suffocating in my own expensive cashmere, as if this hospital room had become an oxygen-free vacuum, and in that moment the billions of dollars in my accounts seemed like empty, fake pieces of paper, and my perfect, controlled world a crystal castle that had just begun to crack. Marta's words became not just a hook, but an anchor thrown into my carefree existence, rapidly dragging me to the bottom of the swamp, which I considered a crystal-clear river of success. I left the hospital without making a deal, and for the first time in many years I felt not the usual, controlled fatigue from business negotiations, but physical nausea. I ordered the driver to take me not to the airport, but to the old archive of my company, the one located in the basement of the first building that Mikola and I bought 20 years ago, before I turned our modest fortune into an empire. Trust, this elegant structure on which I built relationships with partners, had not been subject to any doubt for years, but now, like a rusty mechanism, it began to collapse under the weight of a single, cursed word, killed. I never doubted the version I had formulated myself. Mikola was tired, he had gone to look for himself, leaving the business to me, and I truly believed that he had disappeared of his own free will, for he had always been too honest for this world. Now I realized that my confidence was not only naive but also criminally blind. That same night, sitting among dusty folders and yellowed documents, I began my investigation. It revealed not only betrayal, but also a web of conspiracy woven by my closest associates and former partners, the very ones I had considered my second family. It turned out that Mikola had indeed found something on the plot of land that Marta was now so desperately trying to protect. This wasn't just dirty dirt, it was evidence of a multi-year scheme to falsify environmental reports related to our most profitable projects, a scheme that could have led not only to my imprisonment but to the financial collapse of an entire industry. Our investors, mostly sovereign wealth funds and international banks, were at risk. I saw how my vice president, my right-hand man, whom I had known since childhood, had systematically concealed these reports in order to ensure the stability of the company, or rather, his own stability. I summoned him to my office, but not to accuse him. I wanted the details, the whole truth. "Andrei, did you know about Nikola?" I asked, looking at his perfectly pressed suit and his calm, almost stoic face that never showed any unnecessary emotion. He just shrugged, as if I had asked about the weather. "Victor, Nikola was weak. He wanted to stop the train we had been building for 20 years. When he found those old reports, he started talking about public repentance, about responsibility, about some idealistic rubbish. You know how it works, you can't just expose a scheme that supports half the economy, even if it's dirty. You wouldn't let it happen to you. And someone else wouldn't let him do it." His voice was quiet and rational, and his rationality was scarier than any scream. He admitted that he hadn't killed Nikola personally, but he admitted to promoting silence and ensuring stability by hiding the body in the very building that Marta now refused to sell. My reputation, like a rock that had stood unshakably, was now crumbling to dust. I realized that all these years I had been living a grand lie, presented to me as the truth for the sake of my own financial well-being. Then my guard knocked on the door. "Mr. Victor, the police. They received an anonymous call about a partner who disappeared many years ago." "And the press?" "They are already at the gate." At that moment, I realized that I had lost not only my trust and reputation, but also what I considered my freedom. Andrei smiled, but his smile was not sympathetic, but triumphant. "I meant that someone did not allow you to do this, Victor. Now you either continue to play by the rules or lose everything. Everything that you and I have built." He left, and I was left alone in the office, looking at the first columns of the news that had already appeared on my screen. They had my photo on them, and under it the headline, "Billionaire under suspicion of murder and fraud." The world in which I was king had turned into a cage. I plunged into the chaos that engulfed me with each passing hour, but this chaos, strangely enough, began to bring clarity. The police, the media, the partners who turned away as if from a leper, all this turned into white noise, against which I tried to hear that quiet but insistent voice, the voice of Nikolai, who seemed to speak to me through the years of silence and betrayal. My empire, melting before my eyes, no longer interested me. Now I was looking not for the salvation of the business, but for the redemption of guilt. At this moment, when I was the loneliest and closest to complete destruction, an ally appeared, the most unexpected. It turned out to be Marta. I came to her again, not with an offer of money, but with an apology that stuck in my throat like a stone. Her hospital ward became my last refuge. "You are a liar, Victor. And the killer who didn't shoot." She met me, looking me straight in the eye, and there was so much condemnation in her eyes that any court would have seemed merciful to me. "I didn't come to negotiate. I came to find what Nikola found. What killed him." "I want to know why he left then, that is, why he was forced to leave," I croaked, realizing how empty my words sounded. I handed her the file from the archives that contained all the financial schemes and falsified environmental reports I had found that night. "This is just the tip of the iceberg. Andrei said that Nikola found something more, something on the site." "What exactly?" Marta was silent for a long time, as if considering whether to cast pearls before swine. Then her face softened, and a faint, bitter smile appeared on her lips. "My Nikola was no idiot. He knew that you couldn't stop the train. He knew that if he had revealed this truth, it would have destroyed not only you but thousands of innocent people, workers, investors, entire cities that you had built. He was an idealist, but he was not a fool. He did not leave. He was not killed for it." She pointed to the file on my lap. "He was killed for wanting to give you a chance. A chance for redemption." She said that Nikola, foreseeing that his attempt to stop the scheme would fail, had prepared a backup plan. He had commissioned an independent geological survey of the very site that had been the stumbling block. He was not looking for incriminating evidence there, he was looking for a solution. Marta handed me a small box wrapped in a faded rag. Inside was the key to an old bank vault and a small, rusty metal cylinder. He said that if anything happened, follow the message in the stars and find the third foundation. That was the last thing he said to me before he went to that damned place. He wanted you to find a way to build your future honestly. The key led me to a bank vault where there was a single document, a geological exploration report. It was opening my eyes to not just a deposit, but to a unique, clean source of rare, strategic minerals that could provide energy independence and a breakthrough in clean technologies for the entire country. It was an asset worth trillions, not billions, but its development would require a complete halt to all my old, dirty projects that had kept me afloat. Nikola didn't want to destroy me. He wanted me to become better. In that moment, I realized that his departure was a sacrifice, planned to give me the time and opportunity to realize the magnitude of my mistake and build something new, something real. The world had turned upside down. I was not the victim of a conspiracy, but the beneficiary of a grand, tragic plan of redemption, and the one who had tried to kill me was now my only chance at a real life. My wealth, my power, my empire, all of it was a mirage. The real treasure lay in destroying everything and starting over. Nikola's report was both my salvation and my curse. It gave me the opportunity to build an empire that didn't require lies, but it required a public admission of years of fraud, the destruction of a functioning company, and the inevitable imprisonment. It was a choice between self-preservation on the fragile foundation of past lies and complete destruction for the sake of the truth and a new, clean future. I found myself in a vacuum of pressure, on one side Andrei and the entire old guard, demanding damage control and bury the body in every sense of the word, on the other Nikola's shadow and Marta's silent reproach. I called an emergency meeting of the board of directors, which was held in my penthouse. The atmosphere was tense, like a compressed spring. All these people who had been my henchmen, my friends, my financial elite, were looking at me with cautious contempt, waiting for me to defuse the situation, as I always did. Andrei sat at the head of the table, his eyes radiating cold confidence. "Victor, we have a way out. We admit that Nikola was incapacitated, perhaps psychologically unstable. We will fabricate documents that he himself started these schemes, and we were only trying to hide them to save the investors. The reputation will suffer, but we will save the assets. This is the only way," he said, his voice calm and convincing, and around him there was a nodding of approving heads. I looked at them, and for the first time I saw not powerful businessmen, but pitiful, frightened people, clinging to their golden cages. I felt not anger, but a deep, almost physical remorse for all the years I had been one of them. I laid Nikolai's report on the table, not about the minerals, but about the environmental damage we had done to a small provincial town by hiding toxic waste on that very construction site. Nikolai wasn't crazy. He was honest. And we were crooks. My voice was low and loud, filling the entire space. Andrei stood up, his face losing its mask for the first time. "Are you crazy? Do you want to destroy everything? Do you want to throw us all under the bus because some old woman reminded you of your traitorous friend?" He tried to appeal to my ego, to my fear of loss, but it wasn't working anymore. Nikolai is not a traitor. He gave us a chance. He found not only a corpse, but also new life. I mentioned the real geological report for the first time, but I did so without opening it. There is something in that land that is worth trillions. It could make this country the richest in the world. But it requires cleanliness. It requires us to confess all our sins, close all the old projects, reduce our losses to zero and start from scratch. It requires the truth. I understood that this was an all-in game. If I revealed the details of the deposit, they would try to stop me, to take control, but if I hid it, I would give up. Andrei smiled sharply. "You are bluffing. You are just panicking." I sighed, looking out the window, beyond which the lights of my skyscraper flickered. "Do you think? I have already called the police. And the press. I publicly admit to falsifying the reports and covering up a crime for which not only the company but also I personally must answer. But I won't let you take this last chance. I've already given the originals of the report to Marta, and she'll publish them as soon as I go out and confirm the information about Nikola and the ecological disaster." I looked not at them, but at my gold watch, counting the seconds. It was a sacrifice based not on the power of money, but on stubbornness, on the sole desire to atone for my friend and myself. I chose prison to free the truth. When the door opened and the senior inspector entered, Andre shouted, "You can't do this. We built it together." I just shook my head. "No. I'm destroying it myself. In order to start building it right." The climax ended not with a loud explosion, but with a quiet, decisive step towards my new life, a voluntary confession, which was heard in the complete silence of my now former office. I went out onto the porch, where cameras, flashes, angry shouts from former partners and the stoic face of the inspector awaited me. My words were clear as a bell and uncompromising. I admitted to falsifications, to concealing the ecological disaster, and, most importantly, to guilt for inaction in the case of Nikolai. It was the end of Victor the billionaire, but the birth of Victor the man, who for the first time in 20 years felt not the weight of a financial empire, but the lightness of absolute honesty. The following months were exhausting: court hearings, the complete liquidation of my company, compensation for damages, the seizure of assets. Everything I had built turned into legal ashes. Thanks to my cooperation and testimony, most of my partners, including Andre, were held accountable. Marta became a key figure in this process. She published Mikola's Forbidden Knowledge, a geological report, at the time of my arrest. This document, which confirmed the presence of strategic minerals on the disputed site, became a sensation, but its development required not just new investments, but also a completely new, environmentally friendly infrastructure based on transparency and accountability. Marta insisted that the site remain untouched until it was guaranteed that not a single penny of dirty money would be used in a new project. I received my sentence, and, unexpectedly for myself, found more peace within the prison walls than in my penthouse. One day Marta visited me. She was already very weak, but her eyes, as before, shone with amazing clarity. It didn't bring me comfort, but it did bring a final message from Mikola. When he gave me the key, he said, "Tell Victor that money is just math. Truth is chemistry. The real price of success is being a catalyst for others, not just a formula." He believed you would find a way to start over, she whispered. 3 years later, on early release, I was a nobody, penniless, powerless, branded a criminal. But I had something the billionaire didn't have: a clear sense of self. The new government, taking my credentials and my clean mineral supply into account, offered me a position as a consultant to a newly created state fund that was to ensure the transparent development of the new deposit. Not as the owner, but as someone who knew what not to do. I agreed, refusing any share of the profits, demanding only one thing: that the foundation first of all finance the construction of a modern hospital in the province, on the site of that old ruin where I first heard the truth. I stood on the very site where clean construction was now beginning. Marta had already left, but her son, Nikolai, had not disappeared. He left me not only the deposit, he left me a moral dilemma, the answer to which I found behind bars: is it possible to be rich and honest? It is possible, but the path to this wealth begins with the destruction of everything that was built on lies. I did not become a financial king, I became the architect of a new foundation. The truth did not make me successful, but it made me real. And that was the only currency that mattered. I looked at the construction site and realized that its message from the stars was simple: true capital is not zeros in a bank account, but the unbreakable integrity that you are able to maintain when you have nothing left.